You sent the message 4 hours ago, and now, at midnight, you are still replaying the exact words. You remember the pause before you hit send, the way you reconsidered the phrasing, the small rush of relief when it finally left your screen. But that relief has dissolved. Now you lie awake, reconstructing the entire exchange, wondering if your tone was too blunt, too casual, too eager. You imagine the other person reading it, misunderstanding, forming a judgment you cannot undo. Your mind has turned a single conversation into a trial, and you are both the accused and the prosecutor. This is not a rare affliction. It is something almost all of us know. The day ends, the body stills, and suddenly the mind becomes a courtroom where we defend ourselves against imagined charges. We replay what we said at the meeting, the joke that fell flat, the apology we gave or did not give, the silence that stretched too long. We imagine alternative versions of ourselves who spoke more clearly, chose better words, held back at the right moment. We return again and again to the same conversation, searching for evidence that we failed, that we were judged, that we have damaged something we cannot repair. The Stoics understood this impulse. They knew that the mind, left to itself, does not simply review the past. It prosecutes it. Epictetus would remind us that impressions arrive unbidden, but we decide whether to accept them. When the memory of a conversation returns tonight, it arrives as a kind of test. The impression says, "This matters, you must solve it, you must rehearse it until you find the perfect response." But that impression is not a command. It is an invitation, and you are free to decline. The Stoic practice is not to suppress the memory or to shame yourself for feeling unsettled. It is to notice the impression, to see it clearly, and then to ask a simple question. Is this something I control right now, in this moment, lying in the dark? The answer is almost always no. The conversation has ended. The words have been spoken. What remains is only your willingness to keep the trial open. Seneca's lesson points toward the difference between reflection and repetition. Reflection is purposeful. It examines an action, draws a lesson, and then moves forward. Repetition is something else. It circles the same moment without progress, without resolution, turning the past into a maze with no exit. When you replay a conversation tonight, ask yourself what you are hoping to find. Are you learning something new, or are you simply punishing yourself for being human? Are you preparing for a different outcome, or are you rehearsing a worry that has no form, no name, no clear demand? The mind that replays is often a mind that fears judgment, but the judgment it fears most is its own. Marcus would remind us that we are not required to carry the weight of every word we have spoken. He knew what it was to lead, to speak in public, to make decisions that others would scrutinize. He also knew that no amount of rehearsal could change what had already occurred. The past is fixed. It does not yield to worry. What does yield is the present moment, the quality of attention you bring to this breath, this stillness, this choice to rest. When you find yourself replaying a conversation, you are not engaging with the past. You are engaging with a story about the past, a story your mind is constructing in real time. That story is not neutral. It is shaped by fatigue, by fear, by the assumption that you are always one mistake away from losing something important. But that assumption is not a fact. It is a habit, and habits can be examined. One of the deepest Stoic insights is that dignity does not require perfection. You do not need to have spoken flawlessly to be a person of worth. You do not need to have chosen the ideal words to be deserving of rest. The mind that replays conversations is often a mind that believes it must justify itself, must prove that it is good enough, careful enough, thoughtful enough. But justification is not the same as virtue. Virtue is shown in how you respond now, not in how you wish you had responded then. If you spoke hastily, you can choose patience tomorrow. If you misunderstood, you can listen more carefully next time. If you hurt someone, you can offer a sincere apology when the moment is right. None of that requires you to stay awake tonight, rehearsing a script that no longer matters. There is a discipline in letting a conversation end. It is not the discipline of forgetting or dismissing. It is the discipline of completion. You spoke. The other person heard. Whatever happens next is not something you can control by replaying the moment in your mind. What you can control is whether you allow that moment to occupy the whole of your attention, whether you let it steal your rest, whether you treat a single exchange as though it defines everything about you. The Stoics practiced this discipline not because they were indifferent to their words, but because they understood that worry does not improve judgment. It clouds it. The mind that is exhausted by repetition is not a mind that can respond wisely when the next conversation arrives. Epictetus taught his students to distinguish between what is up to them and what is not. What is up to you is your intention, your effort to speak honestly, your willingness to correct a mistake if one becomes clear. What is not up to you is how the other person interprets your words, how they feel in the moment, whether they carry their own worries into the exchange. You cannot control their inner life. You cannot reach into their mind and adjust the meaning they have made. All you can do is be clear about your own intention and trust that clarity, over time, reveals itself. When you replay a conversation, you are often trying to control something that has already left your hands. You are trying to rewrite a moment that is no longer yours to shape. There is a particular cruelty in the way the mind replays conversations at night. It does not simply show you what was said. It adds commentary, imagines responses you did not hear, constructs entire narratives of disappointment or anger or judgment. It turns a brief exchange into a drama, and you become both the audience and the actor who cannot leave the stage. But that drama is not real. It is a shadow play, projected by fatigue and fear. The Stoic response is not to argue with the drama, not to try to disprove every imagined outcome. It is to recognize the drama as something your mind is doing, not something that is happening. You can watch the projection without believing it. You can notice the story without stepping into it. Marcus would encourage you to return to what is simple and true. You are lying in bed. The room is quiet. The conversation is over. You cannot change what was said, but you can change what you do now. You can choose to close the courtroom, to end the trial, to release yourself from the need to defend every word. This is not indifference. It is mercy. It is the recognition that you are a human being who speaks imperfectly, who sometimes hesitates, who sometimes chooses the wrong phrase, and who is still worthy of rest. The standard you are holding yourself to tonight is not one you would apply to anyone else. You would not keep a friend awake, replaying their words, demanding that they justify every syllable. You would offer them gentleness, understanding, the assurance that one conversation does not define them. You deserve the same. Seneca's lesson about time applies here as well. He warned against spending our hours on things that return no value, on worries that consume us without making us wiser or stronger. When you replay a conversation, ask yourself what you are gaining. Are you becoming more thoughtful, or only more anxious? Are you preparing for something real, or are you simply feeding the habit of worry? If the answer is the latter, then the kindest thing you can do is to stop. Not because the conversation does not matter, but because you matter. Your rest matters. Your peace matters. And no conversation, no matter how important, is worth the cost of your sleep. The discipline of attention is also the discipline of release. You do not need to hold on to every moment, every word, every impression. You are allowed to let things go, to trust that if something truly needs your attention, it will make itself known in a clearer way. Tonight, you are being asked to trust that you have done enough, that your words were sufficient, that the conversation can rest even if it was not perfect. This is not laziness. It is wisdom. It is the understanding that replaying does not repair, that rehearsal does not change what has already occurred, and that the mind needs stillness in order to meet tomorrow with clarity. As you lie here now, let the conversation fade. Not because it was unimportant, but because it is complete. You spoke. You did your best. Whatever comes next is not something you can shape by staying awake. What you can shape is this moment, this breath, this choice to rest. Let the trial end. Let the courtroom empty. Let the words settle into the past where they belong. You are not on trial tonight. You are simply here, breathing, resting, preparing for the conversations that will come when you are rested and clear. That is enough. That has always been enough. Sleep now.